All right, there's a new leak from the NFL Combine that claims Howie Roseman is already working on the phones to potentially move up in the NFL draft. But if this trade were to happen, who could he be targeting? Also, Tony Pollard's name linked to Philadelphia again. Could he be the perfect pairing for DeAndre Swift? Adam Schefter might think so. And Haason Reddick suitors, they aren't offering enough. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. I think the funniest story of the week has to be this report from Connor Hughes that Jets wide receiver Mecole Hardman leaked their offensive game plan to Philadelphia when the Jets faced Philly in New York last October. Now, I don't really care about the Jets one way or another, but New York is all up in arms about this. It's all over social media, yet no one is talking about the fact that the Jets won that game behind three, really bad interceptions from Jalen Hurts. Plus, after Rodgers went down, was there really anything to leak about the Jets' Zach Wilson offense? Either way, funny story. It's crazy to see what social media is doing. I just hope the NFL doesn't get involved, because if he did leak it to the Eagles, could the Eagles be tied on some sort of cheating, their suspensions? I don't think so, but it's worth noting this morning. Now, yesterday morning, we talked about the likelihood of the Eagles moving on from Haason Reddick, but there's a new report from Joe Castro from the NFL Combine saying, quote, Eagles have gotten interest from a couple of teams regarding the availability of Haason Reddick. None of the deals are good enough to move the needle. Most expect there to be an extension with the Eagles before the start of free agency. All right, well, I guess we're back on the Reddick extension train now. Well, remember, extending Reddick, it does help create more cap space now by pushing things further on in the future. And I guess, as I've been saying all week long, it's going to be difficult to get teams to pay enough draft capital to make them want the 29-year-old plus an extension going down the line. I think it all comes down to how badly Reddick wants to be in Philadelphia. Like, if he's willing to take $3 to $5 million less than what other teams potentially could offer him, I think he stays with the Eagles. But if he's sick of what happened this past season, doesn't like the defensive staff or something like that, then he probably goes somewhere else. Castro's reporting wasn't done. He also added that Howie has already begun to work the phones on a potential trade up in the first round of April's draft, saying, quote, Eagles have called multiple teams the possibility of moving up in this year's draft. I wasn't told for who specifically, but there was a couple of guys they moved into the teens for. Now, this is a big deal. This would be a very, very big move up from 22 to the middle of the teens, but it's also not a massive surprise because Howie Roseman, if you've watched the draft the past couple of years, even the entire time Howie's been in Philadelphia, he goes up, he goes down, he finds players he really, really likes and makes sure they become Eagles. I mean, he traded up to 13 to get Jordan Davis back in the 2022 NFL draft. And then, of course, this past year, he moved up one spot, sat at 9, and then got Jalen Carter as well. The kicker is that usually when Howie trades up, it's for can't-miss players like a Jalen Carter, at least in Howie Roseman's eyes, or even Carson Wentz back in the day. Remember, though, Texas defensive tackle Byron Murphy this year, he might be available in the mid-teens, and would anyone be surprised if Howie moved up to 13, 14, 15, and got another defensive lineman with this rumored trade? Now, if you don't know, Murphy is possibly considered the best interior defensive lineman in the entire NFL draft. And of course, again, Howie likes defensive linemen. They got Carter last year, pair Carter and Murphy together, and it starts to make a little bit more sense. Plus, remember, Fletcher Cox, he's potentially leaving and seemingly is hinting that way. Although when asked about the idea of Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelce leaving, where are we at on that overall status, Howie seemed to think that they need a little bit more time.
You know, obviously, those guys are unbelievable players, unbelievable people, and they deserve the right to decide what's best for them. And, we'll wait and give them whatever time and space they need to make the right decisions. And I think the important thing from our perspective is you'd never want to see them wearing different colors. And I think for us, no matter when that is, if they want the opportunity to come back, we'd want to have the opportunity to bring them back.
Now, personally, for me, I would go up and get Quinyon Mitchell, Tyrion Arnold, a secondary piece, a cornerback, a safety. But again, that's just me. Howie has shown you the past couple of years, since 2003, they haven't taken a cornerback in the first round. No Howie Roseman draft has had a cornerback go in the first round, and they've had plenty of opportunities. And so if it's a trade up, offensive line, defensive line, that's my best guess right now. Now, the other interesting news to come out this week is via the ESPN Eagle reporter to McManus, who links Cowboys running back Tony Pollard to Philadelphia when he wrote that, quote, Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator when the Cowboys selected Pollard in the 4th round of the 19 draft. They were paired together for 4 seasons, with Pollard's role increasing each consecutive year. Pollard is well-versed in Moore's scheme, provided a dual-threat skill set, more than 3,600 rushing yards, 1,300 receiving yards, over 5 seasons in Dallas. Eagles tend to gravitate towards, of course, money will be the key here. The Eagles are generally reluctant to invest heavily in the running back position, which is why it is a question whether they'll re-sign Swift following their successful 2023 campaign. And I know your first thought as a Cowboy hater is that Pollard is a little bit washed. I mean, he had a major injury in a playoff game 2 seasons ago, but he did have, let's be honest, 1,000 yards rushing and an offense that featured really other running backs and relied very heavily on Dak throwing the football. Now, we all probably want Derrick Henry, but the Philadelphia thing to do was to get the most talent for the cheapest amount of money. Remember, they could have had Miles Sanders 2 off seasons ago and instead said, Miles, why don't you leave for $6 million a year? We'll bring in Swift on a 1-year deal for a lot cheaper and pair him with, Penny, who they didn't use, and of course, their favorite guy in Kenny Gainwell. What if the Eagles bring back Swift for a cheap, $3, $4, $5 million deal, then add Pollard for the same price, making $8 to $10 million total invested in the running back spot? Now that's a lot for 2, but that's what Derrick Henry himself would cost, and you can kind of see what Howie's thinking with the potential to get Pollard. And Adam Schefter, who was on The Fanatic yesterday, he seemed to echo this and the idea that the running back market is very, very, I would say, packed with big-name free agents. And so the cheaper guys like a Swift could come back to Philadelphia on a very, let's say, not-so-Swift bank account-friendly deal.
Well, I could see that happening, depending on how it all shakes out, right? But the amount of veteran running backs on the street, to me, it's the deepest free agent running back class that we've ever seen. Look, again, you probably know the list, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Right? We got Saquon Barkley,
right?
Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift, A.J. Dillon, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Ezekiel Elliott, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's crazy.
That's amazing.
Right? And not to mention the fact that it's considered a great running back draft too. So what I think will happen is I think there'll be a couple of these guys like Saquon and Jacobs that get paid. And when I mean paid, I don't mean paid like Christian McCaffrey paid. I mean, if they could hit $10 million or north of there, they'd be doing well, and it wouldn't surprise me if a couple of them did it, right around that number. I don't know how happy DeAndre was or wasn't last year in Philly. I don't know how important it is or isn't for him to be in an area where he's from. But, yeah, I mean, that could be an option that all of a sudden he's sitting there and he winds up going back to Philadelphia because, frankly, there are no better other options available. Again, these players, they work so hard to get to free agency, and they bust their ass. And the goal is to get there and then cash in on it. And, DeAndre Swift deserves to get a nice contract, but the problem is he's at a position that, number one, has not typically been paid in recent years, and number two, the market is gutted or glutted or saturated or whatever the word is.
Sure.
There's a lot of them.
Now, time will tell what Howie does with running back. I don't think running back is the number one priority by any means. You put that on the back burner, you focus officially on the Haason Reddick situation, extending Smitty, extending Dickerson, and then fixing the secondary and linebacker spots first. That's way more important than running back. We know that. Running backs have been devalued in the NFL for many, many years. But you get to free agency, the cap space goes up a little bit. It's can we keep Swift and also add a guy like Pollard? There's some potential there, but again, it's definitely on the back burner for me. We got plenty more stuff happening the next couple of days and weeks. Going out of town, going fishing in Key West. You won't see a post for probably a couple of days, back Sunday, so Sunday, Monday, whatever happens. If something crazy happens, though, I'll be there with my iPhone, covering everything happening with the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.